Don't you love the cello? You don't get to hear it enough, do you? It's a beautiful instrument. So this is our second Sunday in Advent, and we already have lit the candle, but I'd like to begin by reaffirming the statement that goes with our candle, which is for the wise men. So let's say it together. I follow the compass of joy. I am supported on this journey by wise companions. So today we are looking at the story of the wise men and how it connects to the book Emergence. Specifically this week we're looking at the idea of shifting the consciousness from calling in something to being that and having that come from us, the divine essence, the divine essential self. So the story of the wise men, as you all know, is they came from the east. Most likely they were astrologers in Babylon, and they had heard of the prophecy of the coming of the Messiah, because when the Jews were in exile, Daniel was talking about it. So they were looking for signs, and probably what they saw was a conjunction of planets. So they traveled to find the Christ child. Now you know the story. They're on their path and they're walking and they're kind of almost there but not quite. And they run into Herod. And Herod says, "Who are you looking for?" And they said, "We're looking for the Christ child." And he said, "Well, you know, I want to fall down and worship him too. So when you find him, will you let me know? Just come back and let me know so I can go see him." And the wise men are like, "Sure, okay." And so they find the Christ child, and you know, they bring him the gifts, the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. The gold represents the purity of spirit. The challenges that we go through are like lead being burned off so that gold is left. The frankincense is that prayer and connection with spirit, and myrrh represents service. So after the wise men had seen the Christ child, they were warned in a dream to go back by another route, so that they would not run into Herod again. Now we know that Herod's goal was to get rid of the Christ child because he'd heard about it, and he was afraid that somebody was going to take his position of power. So what I want to look at today is how we are like the wise men and how we too are on this journey. The star can symbolize, as Barbara Marx Hubbard says in her book Emergence, the compass of joy. And what is the compass of joy? But it is when we follow that inner star, we follow our passion, we follow our desires, we follow our great love in life. And when we follow the compass of joy, when we let love and joy and goodness be our North Star, love wins. So I think it is very important that we stop for a moment and we acknowledge how important this day is. That because of the vote of the people of Washington, today is the first day where people of the same sex can be legally married. And I think we need to stop and acknowledge that. So the compass of joy, the compass of love is what was followed, and Herod may have shown up in many different ways, but the truth is it is wise companions together through activism, through hard work, who make something like this happens. So as I said earlier, the Emergence this week is talking about the shift in consciousness from the personal self to the essential self, to the personal ego self to the divine self. And the truth is, this is not anything that is new. I was talking with a friend this week, and we were talking about the book, and she said, you know, it really follows a lot of the steps that are in a 12-step program. And if you think about it, it's true. What are the 12 steps in it? The first 3 is to admit that we're powerless. And in the case of a 12-step program, it's over some addiction. But we're powerless over the addiction, and that the second one is we need to believe in a power that is greater than ourselves to restore us to sanity and to make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God or a higher power or spirit as we understand that presence. So this is the same thing that Barbara Marx Hubbard is talking about in her book Emergence and in the Shift of 2012. We are willing to surrender to what? To that divine presence that dwells within each one of us. So let's look at the story of the wise men. The wise men and women within us seeks the essential self, seeks the Christ. And it is a journey that goes much better when it is shared with wise companions. And so we have home groups that are studying the book. We have yoga classes led by Siddha. We have friends who empower us. And so as the wise men follow their star, we recognize that they're following their bliss. And when we follow our heart's desire, when we follow our bliss, when we do what we love, when we are good to ourselves and we take care of ourselves, and when we surround ourselves with people who empower us, we are following the star of Bethlehem. We are following the compass of joy. We are being led to the Christ. We're being led to that awakening. And it's great, right? I mean, it's great. So we're on our path. We're on our journey. Perhaps you're following your dream, and your dream is right there. You can just see it. Or maybe it's a new relationship, and you're like, wow, I got this relationship right here. It's perfect. Or it's a new job, or a new home, or whatever it may be. And you're on your journey, you're on your path, and you're following your bliss, and you can just about see it. And what happens? Sometimes Herod steps right up in front of you, doesn't he? Symbolically, Herod stops and blocks the way. And when we were doing the dreams last year, you know, we said that that is the limited beliefs that comes up in us. But here we are, we're on our path, we're seeing it, it's almost there, and then Herod steps forward and says, you know, when you do find that Christ, would you let me know? Because I want to go there too. So he's pretending to be a friend when in fact what he wants to do is kill the Christ. And so my question is, what is it in us that wants to, or maybe not wants to, but can kill the Christ awakening within us if we are not conscious, if we are not paying attention? What is it that seeks to kill an awakening consciousness within us? And I'll say even in our world, what stops us from going forward? I think that one of the greatest writers of our time right now is Eckhart Tolle. His book, The Power of Now and A New Earth, I can go back and read it over and over again and always come up with something that I hadn't seen before. And he describes what I would see as Herod, which is the pain body. Now, what is the pain body? A pain body is negative emotions that become stuck, if you will, in our cells. It's an accumulation of old emotional pain that has not been fully faced, accepted, and let go of, and it forms an energy field in the cells of the body. Now, what's interesting about the pain body is that it lays dormant until it's triggered. So you're like, yeah, I'm fine, it's, you know, and then something will happen and it gets triggered, and he says, you know it's triggered because you hear this voice in your head that may start telling you a story about people or about your life or about things, and then that story might trigger some emotions, and then the emotions trigger the story, and before you know it, you're caught in this loop, and you're kind of going around and around with it. Anybody have that experience at all? He says, once the unhappiness has taken over, not only do you not want it to end, he says we can be addicted to this. He says, but you want to make others just as miserable as you are in order to feed on their negative emotional reaction. Now he says, emotion from the pain body can quickly gain control of your thinking, and once your mind has been taken over, your thinking becomes negative. The voice in your head will be telling you sad, anxious, or angry stories about yourself, about your life, about other people, about past, future, or imaginary events, and the voice will be blaming and accusing, and you believe these distorted thoughts, and the addiction to unhappiness has set in. So here you are, you're on your path, you know, you can see your dream, you can see whatever it is that's right in front of you, the awakening is happening, and boom, Herod steps right out in front of you, and the pain body gets triggered, and there it is. I was reading an article about a man who had everything going for him in life. He was in med school, and he was at the top of his class. He was good looking. He had a great relationship and was going to get married. He had everything from when you're out looking in. He had everything going for him. And he started to commit crimes when nobody would know where he was. He would be out committing crimes. And when he got caught, they asked him, why did you do what you did? What possessed you to do something like this? And his answers seemed very odd, but to me what I hear is the pain body speaking. He said, I didn't feel like I deserved all the good that I had in my life. I didn't feel like I deserved it. And so he went out of his way to sabotage, and to not only to sabotage, but to create pain and chaos in the world. So how do we then work with Herod? The wise men see Herod and they keep going along their path, yeah? So what Eckhart Tolle says about how one deals with the pain body is to accept it, to embrace it, and then to let it go. So the pain body becomes all these experiences that we may have had in our lives, and we just didn't deal with them. We just sort of released them, but not really released them. More so, we just sort of, you know, covered over them. So the wise men were able to make the shift and follow the bliss that leads to the Christ. They were able to make that shift from the personal self, the pain body, to the essential self, and they were willing to face Herod. To face it, to accept it, and let go of it. He said, only if you resist what happens are you at the mercy of what happens, and the world will determine your happiness or unhappiness. So, how does that show up? How does that look in our lives? So many of you know that I got a divorce about 3 years ago. And I miss my family. I miss the kids. I miss the unit. And there's a sadness that goes with that. And I kept thinking, why am I still sad? Because I'm in a great relationship now with Kelly, who's behind the camera up there in the balcony. And I did warn him that I was going to say this so that he's not totally... And we went out in the 80s, in the early 80s. We dated for a couple, 3 years. So it's not like we're new to each other, and we're very connected. And I'm very blessed that he is in my life. We're very blessed to have had a second chance to come together in our relationship. And as blessed as I am and by our relationship and our connection, I'm also sad that my family is no longer a unit. And so what was happening with me is I was judging myself and saying, so what's wrong with you? Why can't you appreciate the good in your life? Why can't you appreciate what you have? Why are you holding on to sadness? And I was talking to a friend about it, and she said, you know, it just is what it is. And I realized that, you know what, we're more complex beings. We're very complex beings, and we can handle more than one emotion at a time, yeah? So you can be sad, and you can be grateful. You can be angry, and you can be appreciative. And so we're a mix of it all. We're not some simple one-dimensional beings. And an interesting thing has happened, that since I stopped judging and fighting the fact that I was sad, guess what the sadness has done? It's moved away, like Herod, like the pain body. It has stepped aside. Does it reappear? Of course it does, especially, at Christmas and holidays. But once I stopped resisting it and saying, well, that's not okay, because then that means I don't appreciate what I have, but rather accept it, embrace it, and then let it go. So it's about creating the space and inviting it in. So I have asked for you to bring journals, and we're just going to do a little piece. And if you would like to write, I invite you to write. We have ushers who can come forward with paper, because I think it's important to anchor these experiences in while we are here together in community. So if you would like paper, and everybody's free not to participate, but if you would like paper, would you please raise your hand so the ushers can find you. There is also paper in the pew in front of you. Does anybody need who doesn't have? Raise your hand. Keep your hand up so they can find you. And there's lots of journals in the bookstore. There's some beautiful, gorgeous journals. It's kind of fun. You just throw it in. You don't have to get a big one. Just get a little one that fits in your pocket. It's kind of fun to keep these things together. And if you're not writing, just be with it and just meditate on it. But here's your start line. The last time the pain body took over is when? Now remember, the pain body is Herod here. The last time the pain body took over is when? The last time the pain body took over is when and just fill it in. I'll give you a minute or two. The last time the pain body took over is when And then if you would, just finish that sentence. You can always pick it up later. And here's another start line for you. When I follow my bliss, When I follow my bliss, And to further anchor this in, I invite you to turn to somebody near you and to share the last time the pain body took over is when So find a partner. I'll give you about 2 minutes, just 1 minute each. Find a partner. If you need a partner, raise your hand. James, I'll bet you. give both people a chance to speak. This is a Reader's Digest mini version. And how about when I follow my bliss, I, just short. Okay, and then I'm going to call you back to the room. So we're making that shift from the personal self to the essential self. We are surrendering, if you will, to a higher power, yeah? So when was the last time you felt the pain body? About a year ago? Last night? This morning? 2 minutes ago? So the truth is, the pain body, according to Eckhart Tolle, lies dormant, yeah? And we're on our path. We're following that compass of joy. We're following our bliss. We're just about there, and then Herod steps right in our path. And it is the pain body. And so one way of stepping aside from Herod and going on to experiencing the awakening of the Christ is to recognize when it starts, when those voices begin, and to just say, you know what, I'm going to step aside from this. I'm going to feel it if I need to. I'm going to accept it, and then I'm going to let it go. So let's say again our statement that's in the bulletin about what we're doing this week. I follow the compass of joy. Together. I follow the compass of joy. I am supported on this journey by wise companions. Look around and see the wise companions who are surrounding you. Today we can see what can happen collectively when we come together with wise companions. Through voting, through work and activism, we follow the compass of joy. Herod was faced in the form of prejudice and fear, and yet the collective pain body was released, and now we have legal rights for same-sex couples to get married. And the truth is, love wins.